Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Earlier last year, I was doing quite a bit of coverage for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. I'm a massive fan of the original game, and I've definitely been really excited about the sequel, but there's been so many twists and turns, ups and downs, and a lot of questions about whether or not we were ever even going to get this game, to the point that I decided to kind of back off of covering it and moved on to other things. And I know many of you have actually reached out, talked a lot about the dev diaries that the Chinese room is doing and asked me to cover those. And I pretty much refused because I'm like, if the game is never going to be released, there's really no sense in focusing on it. But we did get a new update yesterday confirming that the game is going to come out in October of this year. And even more importantly, that the game essentially is finished from the standpoint of they can play it front to back. And now they're just working on polishing and refining things regarding the title. So that makes it seem at least a little bit more on solid footing. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm also going to reference a lot from a PC Gamer article that came out yesterday regarding Bloodlines 2 that talks about some of the systems and things that they're working on to hopefully make the experience pleasurable for a lot of players. Now, I have kind of a love and hate relationship with PC Gamer. Yeah, I gotta admit, there have definitely been sometimes they've come out with things and I've been very, very harsh and critical and felt like really it was absolute garbage. And then there are other times they come out with articles where I was like, wow, this is some amazing analysis and really, really happy they did this. PC Gamer is incredibly positive about their time spent with Bloodlines 2. Like, really, really shockingly positive, and the writer made it clear, hey, he can't wait for this game to release. I'm actually more than a little surprised by the tone of the article. It'll be interesting to see if the actual game matches a lot of what he says. But I have decided definitely it's time to go ahead and circle back to this game. So I will be covering those previous dev diaries at some point as well. But anyway, circling back to the article, the first thing that they mentioned that caught my eye is that you will not choose your clan as part of character creation, which to me is very, very interesting. So they're going to let you go through some of the story, meet some of the different characters, and get a better foundation of what the world of darkness is actually like first. And then you'll have the option to select which clan you're actually a part of. And I think that's actually really cool. I think it helps out players who are completely new to this type of lore and environment. And I think it'll hopefully help cut into players feeling like they have to start over because they're getting an experience that they didn't really expect. So I think that's probably a step in the right direction. I think it's also really cool that you are playing as an elder vampire whose powers have been taken away, but you do not start the game powerless. Right off the bat, you're going to have supernatural strength, speed, and agility. You can climb up buildings very quickly. You can glide for long distances and pull off air dashes. And you've got unlimited telekinesis. So it sounds like the game does a really good job of making you feel like a powerful elder vampire who at the same time has even less powers than they actually should. So presumably by the end of the game, you're just gonna feel all powerful, which is how these vampires should feel anyway. I'm definitely looking forward to that. One of the issues I had with Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song was it put you in the role of an elder vampire who had a ton of trouble persuading even ghouls or humans to do what he wanted. And I felt like it was such a dumbed down version of what we've come to know about those types of characters. And so it seems like Bloodlines 2 is going to get that right. Definitely something I'm looking forward to. And I've already mentioned multiple times that I'm really looking forward to the combat. And that was definitely pushed to the forefront in this article. It appears that we're going to be able to do combos with our disciplines that will cause really interesting effects. So the article mentioned that they are playing as a Tremere, and that as a Tremere you could create blood bombs where a target could be primed, and then after a few seconds they would explode, dealing damage to all the other enemies around them. Well, in this game, later on, you can also get access to powers from other clans. So they mentioned using this ability in tandem with the Ventru's possession ability. So basically, you prime someone for blood bomb, then take possession of them, walk into a group of enemies, and then let off the bomb. They also talked about the Ventru using the taunt version from the Bruja power line. And the cool thing about this is not only does it force enemies to attack you, but they'll drop their weapons when they do. So if they're carrying a gun, they could drop their gun and then just run forward, try to attack you. And then you could use your telekinesis to pick up the gun and start firing at people. So seems like there's a lot of different options. Creativity is going to be rewarded. That sounds cool. Again, I already said, I feel like the combat in Bloodlines 2 is going to be significantly better than the combat of Bloodlines 1. And so that is something that I'm looking forward to playing around with. The article specifically compares the combat in this game to Dishonored, with its combination of powers, stealth, and open combat. And I definitely feel like that's a positive comparison. Really enjoyed my time with Dishonored 1. For whatever reason, Dishonored 2 couldn't hold my attention, but the first game, I felt like it was such a joy walking around in that world and using your different abilities. Now, it's also interesting to see how they're handling dialogue and reputation. Reputation is going to be a big deal in this game, and you're going to have a discrete private reputation with each different character that you meet. So unlike most games where you just have one reputation and it's pretty much known by all characters that you interact with, you're going to be able to create very different relationships with all types of different characters. So one character might see you as the funny guy and the person who's a good time, where another character might see you as someone who's very stern and serious and all about business. One character might see you as someone who's very diplomatic and always wants to talk things out, and another might see you as someone who is very violent, and you should expect violence whenever he shows up. And this is going to impact how characters react to the different dialogue options that you choose. So cracking a joke with someone who expects humor from you and expects you to say things that other people might find pleasing is going to go off very differently, as opposed to someone who has come to expect violence from you. They might take that joke in a completely different manner. And of course, your clan is going to impact all of this as well. So the PC Gamer article talked about two different playthroughs. One is a Tremere and one is a Ventru. And the Tremere are very mistrusted. Many vampires don't even see them as real vampires. And so consequently, people react much differently to you right from the jump, as opposed to a Ventru who is looked at as a leader, who is looked at as much more acceptable, vampiric nobility, essentially. You're going to get a much different reaction when you're talking to people as that clan. And so that's going to impact your ability to persuade people as well. Another interesting note about how conversations are being handled is that even questions can have dire consequences. So it was mentioned in games like Dragon Age or Mass Effect, usually you can ask all the questions that are presented to you, and then there are separate statements that can be made which clearly move the dialogue forward. That's not the case in Bloodlines 2. Each dialogue option you select has the potential to get a strong reaction from the character you're speaking with. So everything that you ask or comment on needs to be carefully considered. And I think that's interesting. It could work out really well. Avowed was very similar, but I felt like that system was extremely poor and that you were put in a position where it was very difficult to know what was the best way to get more information about a particular quest or subject. But it also came off, honestly, almost haphazard in Avowed. So maybe with Bloodlines 2, if they're a little bit more purposeful with it, it'll be a little bit more clear for the player and a much more enjoyable experience. Definitely looking forward to going through it. And then finally, they also mentioned when it comes to engaging in these dialogues, you almost become like a Sherlock Holmes type character, picking up different clues and tidbits about a person well before you end up speaking with them, and you can combine some of that information and have a good idea about how you should engage in those dialogues. And that pretty much wraps up the information from the PC Gamer article. So let me just give you some of my general thoughts. Once again, I feel like combat is going to be great, and I feel like it's going to be a significantly better experience from the original. I think being able to play as an elder vampire is fantastic. I like the idea of them trying to present things in a very, very different way compared to the original game. They're not trying to just spin the same tale all over again. I like the way dialogue and reputation seem to be handled in the game. I like the idea of different people are going to see you different ways, because that's pretty much the way it works in real life. And I think it could potentially create a situation where it's always interesting entering in these dialogues, right? Because different people see you different ways, and you have the option of either playing into that or deciding, you know what, I'm having a bad day and I feel completely different today. So that should be really, really interesting. What I don't like and what I feel like is odd, the PC Gamer article just doesn't mention at all, is that a lot of what made Bloodlines amazing is the variety of different ways you can approach the game, whether it be stealth or hacking or lockpicking, or you had different dialogue options, and you have things you could build up around different methods of combat, whether it be weapons or guns or whatever. And so I just don't see the variety and what's being talked about when it comes to this game. I don't see the flexibility. It seems much, much more limited in scope. And I think on some level, it's disappointing that this game has the Bloodlines name, and that's not at all the fault of the Chinese room. They're just trying to make the best game they possibly can. But I think if this was Vampire the Masquerade something else, I would feel significantly different about it. I would be able to say, okay, this is just what they decided to do, and that's cool. Let's just play it for what it is, you know? But with that Bloodlines name on it, there's a certain pedigree and legacy that supposedly you're living up to. And I feel like this game is not even really gonna attempt to do that. But of course, I could be wrong. So again, as I've stated from the very beginning, I'm absolutely going to buy this. I'm absolutely going to play this, and I'm absolutely going to do content on it. And so we'll see how it all shakes out in the end. But that's probably my main concern. Anyway, those are my thoughts based on the information we have. At some point, I will comb through the dev diaries that have been released thus far and give you all a summary of some of the different mechanics and artwork and concept art and things of that nature that the Chinese room has released up to this point. And I will definitely be staying up to date on any additional information that comes out regarding this game. Which means if you haven't already, definitely make sure you subscribe to continue getting that content. Like this video, please, if you enjoyed it. And speaking of which, I hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.